Good morning, Bay Park. What a beautiful, warm, sunny week we've been enjoying. This Sunday, we'll be finishing up our series in Philippians entitled From Captivity. It's hard to believe, but we started this series 9 weeks ago. Last Sunday, we drilled down into chapter 4, verse 2. I plead with Yodia and I plead with Syntyche to be of the same mind in the Lord. Conflict is a reality of life in a fallen world, and Christians and churches are no exception. But the best way to deal and to handle the inevitable conflict is to seek to have the mind of Christ. To look at every conflict we face and ask, Jesus, show me how you want me to deal with this. Why do we turn to Jesus? Because he's God and has the best track record for dealing with conflict successfully. If it wasn't for Jesus, his life, death, and resurrection, we'd still be stuck in a hopeless and deadly rebellious conflict with God. What happened to Yodia? What happened to Syntyche? Did they resolve their differences? Was unity and harmony restored? We don't know. And that too is part of life, friend. Not every conflict is going to be resolved. Not every conflict is in our power to resolve. I can't help but think of Jesus and Judas. How Jesus calmly and openly addressed the storm that was brewing in Judas by calling him out, saying, one of my disciples is going to betray me. Why did Jesus do that? Well, to give Judas an opportunity to come clean and be healed, I imagine. I imagine Jesus also did it for the sake of the other disciples, to avoid them going off on some crazy, backbiting, blame-laying, infighting tirade after Judas's betrayal. But even in addressing the conflict openly, honestly, humbly, calmly, graciously, Judas still chose to betray Jesus. Not all conflicts will be healed in this life, but here's the good news. Even when conflicts aren't healed, dealing with them from a Christ-centered perspective still gives peace. A peace that is not solely tied to resolution, but rather a peace that comes from being one with Christ and for doing what's right in the power of the Holy Spirit. That, my friend, is gold. Friend, I want to remind you of this week's challenge. Ask God to bring a name or two to mind with respect to a conflict, then ask the Holy Spirit to help you to be more like Jesus in this conflict. Don't see God in your conflict simply as a guarantee for resolving all conflicts, as if you can just sprinkle a bit of Jesus dust on all your conflicts and they'll simply go away and you'll be conflict-free. Rather, do it because it's the right thing to do, what God has called you to as a peacemaker, and leave the results in his hands. Again, I can't help but think of Jesus' response to the crowds who were following him after the miracle of the loaves and the fish. Amazing how popular you can become with the promise of free food every day. Not long after that miracle, Jesus said to the crowds, now enamored with him, pursuing him, he said, very truly I tell you, you are looking for me, not because you saw the signs I performed, but because you ate the loaves and had your fill. Now that's in John chapter 6, verse 26. Jesus went on to tell them about the importance of believing in him as the Son of God, not as the guarantee of free food. That conversation didn't end well with many. In fact, it upset them. Not all conflicts will be resolved. Sometimes even attempting to resolve a conflict will increase the tension. But what matters most is learning to trust God with our conflicts and seeking to have the mind and attitude of Christ in our conflicts, leaving the results to God. When we're not willing to trust God and leave the results to him, that's when we turn to passive-aggressive, peace-faking, and peace-breaking habits that guarantee more pain and problems in the short term and also in the long term, and for everyone, not just for us. That's why we trust God with the posture, with the process, and with the end result. There's some good resources on our webpage with respect to dealing with the inevitable conflicts of life. I also want to remind you that tonight we're having another Facebook Live panel at 8 p.m. Hope to see you then, friend. Have a great week.